Buongiorno e bentornati nella Trona della Volpe. Oggi, questa mattina c'è un video un po' particolare, un po' speciale a cui io tengo tantissimo perché è un'intervista con una scrittrice che si chiama Camille Monceaux, una scrittrice francese che ha scritto il primo volume, ma poi ovviamente concluderà la tetralogia delle Cronache dell'Acero e del Ciliegio, di cui vi avevo già parlato tempo fa. E ho avuto modo tramite Ippocampo, che ringrazio tantissimo, di intervistarla e quindi di farmi raccontare un pochino la sua esperienza in Giappone, la sua esperienza di scrittura, le sue scelte, insomma ci sono tante riflessioni interessanti che sono venute fuori nella nostra intervista e finalmente posso condividerla con voi. Sarebbe stato bello fare una diretta, ma per questioni soprattutto di lingua e quindi di dialogo con Camille, noi abbiamo parlato in inglese, che ovviamente è una lingua che tutti conosciamo, ma mi è sembrato più utile anche per voi, per permettervi di seguire con più leggerezza anche tutto il dialogo, avere il tempo di mettere dei sottotitoli, e quindi anziché fare la diretta ho preferito registrare la conversazione con Camille quando abbiamo potuto parlarci e mettere dei sottotitoli in italiano, in modo che questo dialogo in inglese, ogni tanto il mio inglese ha un po' di sobbalzi perché ero un po' stanca, ma avrete pazienza, tanto ci sono i sottotitoli, quindi che questo dialogo con Camille potesse essere di leggera fruizione anche per voi. Devo dire che io ho un debole per lei perché è una persona molto piacevole, molto morbida, ha un bel modo di fare e soprattutto ha una cautela, un'attenzione a maneggiare il Giappone, passatemi il termine, che io apprezzo molto, quindi una sorta di amore ovviamente per questo paese, ma anche di grande rispetto per questa cultura, che è una cultura che lei ama, ma come dirà appunto nell'intervista non è la sua cultura di nascita e quindi sente di doverle portare un particolare rispetto. Io quindi non mi dilungo tanto in questa introduzione, però ci tenevo a farla per dirvi che vi ringrazio per essere qui e per vedere questo video, vi ringrazio per così l'attenzione che mi dedicate sempre e spero che questo dialogo con Camille Monceaux possa essere di interesse per voi. Sappiate che a breve, per chi l'ha letto, uscirà il secondo volume di questa bella tetralogia, quindi lo aspettiamo così frizzanti, con un po' di fremito. Io per ora vi ringrazio e vi lascio all'intervista con Camille. Ciao.
Hi, Camille. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for offering your time for me also.
No worries. It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much. I have to say, I read your book and I read it so much that I ruined it a little bit. But I read it with great pleasure, and so I'm very happy to be able to talk to you today. And so I'm sure that also my viewers will be very happy to hear from you directly. So I don't have a lot of questions, also because I think that you already talk a lot about many things. So I try to be a little bit more precise on the things that I found interesting. I hope this makes sense. Because of course this is a very beautiful depiction of Edo Japan. So it's a very how to say, it captures you. So it's a book that keeps you inside the story. But it's about Japan, so it's a very far away land, and we know something about Japan here in Italy. We know a lot about Japan, but it's a very stereotypical image of Japan. So I would like to start with a few questions, very simple questions about you and your Japan. So I know that you fell in love with Japan when you were younger, when you were meeting anime and manga, for example, for the first time. So I'm very curious about your first encounter, your first travel, your first impact with Japan.
My first travel, so it was after my studies. I had been studying Japanese for over a year, and for my master's degree dissertation, I wrote about Japanese literature and the history of French translation of Japanese literature. So it was very interesting, and it really made me want to go to Japan. So at the end of my studies, I decided to go live to Japan for a year, and I took a plane and I arrived in Tokyo. And my first impression of Japan was, wow, it's a typhoon. Because we arrived at the beginning of October, which is the typhoon season in Japan. So with my husband and I, at the time he was my boyfriend, we arrived, and it was crazy windy. It was so rainy, like our umbrellas were just flipped away from us because of the wind. We were super jet lagged, obviously. And so I remember arriving to the flat that we had rented for a year, looking out through the window and being like, wow, this is Japan. The weather is really crazy here. No, it was, and the week before, it was very sad. Actually, there was a volcanic eruption with one of a very famous Japanese mountain, and I don't remember the name exactly, but so my parents were super worried, and because I like hiking, and they were like, Japan is super dangerous, and so. And it was in 2014, so it was just 3 years after the tsunami and the drama of Fukushima. So it was very still fresh at the time. So my parents were very, very worried, and they didn't want me to go there actually. But I went anyway. And after a few days of adjusting, I fell in love again. I don't know if that makes sense, but then I remember that for 3 months, every day, waking up and taking the subway to go to the school where I was taking Japanese classes, I was thinking, oh my God, I'm in Japan, and I'm living in Japan, and this is amazing. This is so much fun. So yeah, it was really amazing.
That's very interesting because arriving to Japan is always some kind of shock.
Yeah.
I guess for many of us, we picture Japan in a kind of way, in some specific way, and then reality check
is different.
is different. But it's very nice because at the end you still love it, and that's the most important thing, I guess. So the other question is, of course, Japan is a fascinating place, and we all wanted to write about it, I guess. But you made a very specific choice, a very brave choice, not to write about contemporary Japan, which would be much easier, I guess, but to go back in time and lead us into a very specific Japan, which is Edo, and which is a very, I think, difficult era to narrate, because we have an image which is that of peace, of samurai, of maybe also wealth for some reasons. But you show us a very different world, and I'm fascinated by the world. So I would like to know how you come up with the idea.
First of all, I didn't write about contemporary Japan because, on the contrary, for me, I felt that it would be harder, because I lived in Japan for a year, but it was not enough to grasp really what it would be like to be a Japanese. So it would have been harder, and it would have asked at the time when I started to write the novel, it would have asked me a lot of work to write about modern Japan nowadays, and I didn't feel comfortable with it. And since I really didn't want it to write from my point of view. I don't feel comfortable about writing about me. I decided to write an historical novel because, in fact, for me, it was easier to imagine what Japan at the time could be like. And I think also it was safer in a way, because Japan from the beginning of the Edo Jidai is as far as from Japan nowadays as it is in France. I mean, between a French nowadays and a French from the 17th century, there is a gap, there is a worm.
Yes.
It's so different. And it's the same. It's the same for Japanese history, obviously. So it was safer to write from this perspective because it was, how to say, I could be more respectful because Japan is not my native culture, and so I didn't want to do any cultural appropriation. So it was a way to make a lot of historical researches and to try and be as respectful as I could be. Sorry, there is a
Yes.
and
It's okay.
You are right to say that indeed we know a lot about Edo, the Edo era, but maybe a later Edo Jidai with the peace well installed, the Tokugawa shogunate is the government, and no one is thinking of questioning that. Whereas in my novel, it's the really beginning of the Edo period, and so everything is still changing and moving, and so there is still a chance that the Tokugawa shogunate could be overthrown and someone else take the power instead of Tokugawa Ieyasu. It was a possibility at the time, so it was not yet completely peace. And so I found that it was very interesting because it was quite different from the image that we have of Edo Jidai nowadays. And also, it is true that during the Edo time, there was the birth of a very wealthy merchant class, social class. But at the beginning of the Edo period, it's the very beginning of this merchant classes, and so they are not still as powerful as they are going to be at the end of the 17th century and then during the 18th century. And so it was interesting also to try and depict how these merchant and artisan classes grew more and more powerful, and how they also created their own way of entertaining themselves with, for instance, the kabuki theater.
Yes, that's another question that I have for you, but it's very interesting because indeed you present us with a world that is still, how to say, being created. So we have Tokugawa already, but he's the bad guy in some way, because in the beginning we are presented with a couple of people. I don't want to spoil anything, but a couple of people that are also our heroes that are against Tokugawa himself. So we have a clash of ideas, how to say. And it's also interesting because it's a way to show that Japan was a very, how to say in English, very active intellectual also a place where not everyone was, okay, this is the way to go and we go like that. No, harmony is a little bit overrated in this sense. To show the contrast and to show the differences was very, very interesting for me because it's just the beginning of what is going to be, but it's still very, very conflicting. So I found it very interesting. And then it was also interesting because you lead us into the samurai world in the very beginning, but then you shift drastically. And for me, it was very fascinating into a completely different dimension where samurai or warriors have a very different place. And you look at them in a different way. And the focus are artists and painters and writers, and that's, I think, one of the strongest point for me in the book, because you present us with other humanities, with other human beings in Japan. So how did you arrive there?
Well, first of all, thank you, because I know that writing about theater was a challenge, and I wasn't sure everyone was going to love it. But it was so important to me that I didn't want to make any concession about it. And actually, it's funny because when you think about it, you never have a hero that is an artist. It's very rare, especially in young adult literature. You wouldn't have a hero and his superpower is, ooh, he can paint, or
Yes.
ooh, he can
dance.
No, he can dance. Superpower. No, you have in animes such as Naruto, you have a very in every shonen you have fights, you have war, so fighting skills are super important. So I wrote about it. Ichiro is educated in the tradition of the way of the sword, so as a warrior. But then I wanted to take the counterpart of it and to say, okay, now he's going to be on the other, in fact, on the other side of the mirror, because you have the leading powerful caste, which is the warrior, who they have been at the summit of power for many centuries. They have been at the highest ranks, and in fact, at the time, the emperor still exists, but he doesn't have any power. So you have an aristocracy, you have a nobility who is not linked with the sword, but they have no power. Every power is in the hands of the samurai class, and then you have the rest of the country. And so Ichiro is educated as a samurai, but then he goes on the other side of the mirror, and he discovers actually what it is to be a normal human being in Edo period, when you don't have the power in your hands, especially when you are an artist or from the very low classes upon which everyone at the time, everyone despised the artists and the vagabonds and the prostitutes. And so he discovers these new social classes, and it's a very good way for him to think upon what he learned as a child, and to maybe start to think about what is wrong with the way of the sword, and what is wrong with one group, one social caste having the power of exerting violence upon the other classes.
Yes, that's another point for me, very interesting, because Ichiro is not the traditional hero, as you said. He is a very quiet, silent boy, which is grown up in the mountains, so he doesn't know anything about life itself, and he has to learn it the hard way. So he has to find out how to survive in the urban area. And so you present us with this man, which is not yet a man because it's a very young boy, that starts his life in a way, and then something tragic happens and he shifts some other ways, but still keeping some, I don't want to say sweetness, because it's not sweetness, but it's something very delicate about him. Some elements of artistry, ability to think about the things, to connect with people, empathy, which are very unique for the era, for men. So this was very interesting to me. And it's not the only one, because you surrounded him with other friends, male friends, which are similar to him somehow.
Yeah.
So you led us into the outcast heroes, which are very empathic heroes, and I found it very fascinating. So again, the choice to pick men and making them less warrior, is there another, how to say, it's not an agenda, but it's another message also, maybe?
Yeah, it really is, because, well, I'm not ashamed to say it, I'm a proud feminist, and I read a lot about men, and it's really hard to, and I was not so much when I first started to write the novel, and most of my reading and awareness began mostly, I would say, a year after I started writing in 2017, and then with the Me Too movement and everything, I felt like I didn't know anything about feminism, so I started to read a lot about it, and so I learned a lot. And when I worked on the novel before it was published, so the first version already existed, but I had to work on it again. I really the every characters, the novel already existed as it was, like with Daichi and Shin, who are indeed vulnerable characters. Shin is not, I mean, it's not that he's weak, but he's a bit weird, and he doesn't get along with kids his age, and he has a violent dad and a violent brother. And Daichi has addiction.
A lot of problems.
Super eccentric, and I really love this character. He was a lot of fun to write and to imagine. But when I worked again on the novel from a feminist perspective, I tried to work even more into that, and to I mean, I don't want to convey a message that would be anachronic, but on the other hand, you can write feminist stuff in a Japanese historical setting. It's possible, and the way to do it is to have, for instance, a hero who is not going to speak instead of the woman, who is not going to try and save them. And of course, Ichiro, he was raised this way. So there are things that he's going to want to do a certain way. And that is going to be, I think, his great challenge throughout the series. It's going to be how to deconstruct what he was taught, and how to keep the bits that he likes, and how to also invent new way of behaving, new ways of thinking, new ways of maybe being a samurai without killing persons. And so having characters like Daichi and Shin were super important, also because I think it was important to show a diversity, and not because it would be easy to have all bad male characters, all violent, all mean. But no, it's too easy. Everything is not black and white. And so I needed characters strong and fragile, like Daichi and Shin, to show that you can have a lot of different characters.
I agree, and I think that these are, yes, I think that these are role models somehow. I mean, there are different kind of manhood, how to speak.
Yeah, exactly.
And they offer a different look upon what a boy can be.
Yeah, exactly.
So you don't have to perform in a way to be considered a boy. Or I think about Shin, who is very, as you said, it's not fragile, but it's quite awkward.
Yeah.
But he still is very conscious about his abilities and what he wants, and how to, not how to pursue it, but how to find ways to work around the power of the family, which is a very hard family, a very difficult family. So I think that that was very interesting, just not just because they are fun characters, but also because they are well-rounded and they speak to you as a reader in a very convincing way. That's the point, because you also show different men that are a more traditional kind of men as all around the world. But these are the ones that stick to you, and you hope they go as you want them to go. Final moment. First of all, the novel. I don't know. I have to go and wait for the new one, because it was a cliffhanger, a terrible cliffhanger.
I'm sorry.
I finished the book and I said, no, I'm sorry, some pages are missing. I need to know what's going on. Aside from that, and that will be my last question, but you also introduced a character which is, I think, the title of the book is connected to it, which is Hinaime, which is a very mysterious character, and we don't know her very much. We don't see her almost never. not a lot, yes. So how do you come up with this character?
Yeah, she's very precious to me. She's very important to the book and to the series. She was actually the first character that I thought of when I first started to want to try and write this novel, and I had an image of her, and I saw a picture of a young woman wearing a mask in a Japanese palace, and with a whole mystery around her identity. And I thought, obviously in medieval Japan, and I remember thinking, I want to write her story, and I want to know what happened to her, and I want to know why she's wearing a mask. But then, why didn't I choose to write from her perspective? Because I think it was so much fun to have the description from Ichiro's point of view. The mystery is even bigger if it's from him, and he doesn't dare asking the question at the beginning. He's too shy. He's like, I mean, maybe she has leprosis, maybe, I don't know, maybe she has warts, maybe she's, I don't know. So he's too shy, he's too polite to ask the question. And the day he finally dares answering, asking the question, Hinahime gives him an answer, but then is it the truth or not? That's also the whole story, because in a way, Hinahime is an unreliable narrator in that sense, because maybe she was fed with some lies, we don't know. You will have to read the whole series to know. And
yes.
it's a lot of fun to think about it and to write all about it.
Yes, also because the title, in Italian is La maschera del no, so the no mask. And the thing that is also very interesting is that you write about kabuki, which is the other form of art, and it's the lower form of theater, if I can say like that, which is not accurate, but just to have an idea. While the no was a very traditional, high-end theater style. So I think it's very interesting because she's the only one actually that carries this halo of tradition, mystery, of unknown, and something maybe ageless also. So it's just very fascinating, very charming. So I don't want to keep you too long. One last question is, this is a 4-book series, is it correct?
Yes.
So I know that in a few months we'll be reading the second here in Italy, and I'm quite curious. Yes, it's beautiful because it's red. So beautiful. I can't wait to have it. And is there anything that you can tell us about this book? Because, in the end, we just don't know where the characters are going to be.
Well, you can expect travel again, because I love writing about travel. So Ichiro will be traveling again. You can expect new characters, and also for the readers who liked the character of the master, El Maestro, well, you will have some more information about him in the second book.
Oh, yes, because
not only that, but this is a sneak peek.
Yes, and that's nice because I did love the character of the master and the all in all the whole setting of the first part with Oba, with the old lady. It was so how to say, so warm and so cozy. So I'd love to know more about him.
I received so many messages from readers about Oba. Just people sending me, and even from my family or friends who read the book, just the emoji with crying face, like Oba crying face, and I was like, I'm sorry, she had to die.
She had to go. I'm sorry. And I have to say, she is very it's like a grandma.
Yeah,
so you are very you can connect very easily with her. She's the only warm figure he has in the childhood. So that moment along with others are the end of childhood. So that's a very interesting rite of passage. I'm going to say like that. Last one. If you have to pick one character among all the characters in here, which one is the one you're more not close to? But not the character you feel more close to you, but the one you love more, the one you're more connected to.
It's hard to say, especially because now I'm writing the third book, And so, and in the second one, you are going to find a whole new lot of characters, but I cannot give you any name from new characters. So it's a bit hard, because I know which one I would answer if it was in the second.
Okay, now let's keep it to the one first.
Yeah. I would say it is the master, maybe. Probably, okay. Because he's very intriguing and complex. And so if I had time, I would want to write more about him and Oba and his relationship to Oba.
Yeah, that's very, very nice. I have a soft spot for Shin.
I know. He's the sweetest. I love him too. Yeah,
it's very lovely, but
he's very important.
Yes, I have to say all the characters are very relatable, and so you cannot not love them. No. Somehow along the way you have to fall in love with them.
That's the best compliment.
So Camille, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks to you.
And I really cannot wait to read the second part of the books.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marianna. Bye-bye.